Shana Tova, welcome everyone.
Shana Tova.
Shana Tova.
Was that you, Bob?
Yeah, that was me. Sorry, I was clearing my throat.
No problem. Hey, Rich Albert, how are you, my friend? Good seeing your Punim.
Thank you, Rabbi. Shana Tova.
Shana Tova.
Acterra.
I changed, your name is up here.
Yeah, you can change it. You know how to do it?
It's up here where it says mute.
What? Mute the screen.
If you need help, Schreibsteins, I can help change names if you like. I can actually rename you if you like. Bless you, Sybil.
Thank you.
I see all the people.
We'll give it another minute and then we'll start.
Sounds good.
I'm very excited about our presentation today.
Well, we got 35 now, so it's a pretty good turnout.
We're getting there.
Anyway. I don't know, tell me, look on the,
So I think we should begin after we let Bev in. Well, Shana Tova, everyone. Happy New Year. Gemar Chatima Tova. Hope you're all having an easy fast. Those of you that are fasting, please drink water, though, either way. And I'm very excited about today's presentation. As I talked about in my sermon earlier, if we want to look at the big issues of our society, looking at the misogyny, the racism, the lack of civil rights, we have to understand that the foundation of all of that is how we treat our planet. And as I equated, however you define God, how we treat God is how we treat the planet and vice versa. From my theological perspective, I think the earth and God as the universe is all one and the same. So it's even more important how we think about the treatment of this planet. So I'm super excited that for Tikkun Olam session that we're going to have our green team leading this amazing session. So I want to thank Bob Levy and Shannon Brown for their incredible work that they've done preparing this session, but also the work they have done with the Dayenu Circle and the amazing program we did at City Hall a couple weeks ago. And I know that the green team will do many presentations over this year as we're dedicating this year really to understanding more about our planet and how we can take care of it. And so with that, a couple of things, we're gonna ask you all to please mute yourself. There's a few of us that will go ahead and mute you, but go ahead, please unmute yourself. If you have questions for the panelists, feel free to use the chat. That would be perfect. And then when the time comes, Bob and Shannon will invite you, if you'd like to ask a question, to go ahead and unmute yourself. And at that point, please unmute yourself and ask your question and then mute it again. Without any further ado, it's my great honor to invite Bob Levy to share some words with us.
well, thank you very much, Rabbi. Shana Tova, and thank you everybody for joining us today. I'm sure it's going to be a very interesting and informative workshop. In a few minutes, I'll introduce our three panelists. And then following the panelist discussions, it'll be your turn to provide us comments, ask us questions, whatever you'd like. We'd like to hear from you. At the conclusion of the presentations and the questions and answers, then Shannon will provide a little information on what additional resources are available for you to make a difference. But before I start, I'd like to thank the rabbi for his sermon today. It was a very, very good sermon. And the rabbi's philosophy and mine are the same, that I see God through nature, the beauty of nature, and that it's all our responsibilities to protect nature, because if we sin against the planet, nature, we're sinning against God. And as Jews, our philosophy is to protect creation and to leave a better planet for our future generations, the So let's live by our Tikkun Olam and L'dor, and do what we can. And we need to do that right now. And seeing that this is the Day of Atonement, it's a great day to provide a little fear of God and put a little fear of God into you. So I'm going to start with some doom and gloom, where we really are with the climate crisis. And then Shannon's going to, or then we'll have our panelists discuss it. And then Shannon will tell you a little bit about what we can do. So let me go on without further ado. The climate crisis is here, and there's no doubt about it. Everybody's reading the newspaper on a daily basis. We're breathing the stinky air that we have here. There's fires all over the world, in Europe, North America, and the fire in Siberia is bigger than all the other fires in the world combined. I don't know if you realize how much of the world is burning up. We saw what happened in Australia last year. Our oceans are warming up. As a result, we're seeing hurricanes line up against in the Atlantic Ocean and in the Gulf of Mexico, hammering our East Coast and Gulf states. We're seeing the biggest typhoons on record in the Far East, and the typhoon's the same thing as a hurricane, just on the other side of the world. And so we're seeing these hurricanes on both sides of the world, seeing flooding everywhere. The polar vortex that we saw last year was a result of slowing Gulf streams, these slowing air currents, and they're not pushing things out of the way, which is also one of the reasons we're seeing droughts here, is because the jet streams are slowing down and not pushing the storms. They're pushing the domes away. The one thing I don't have here is drought, and we know what kind of drought we're in right now.
Want me to change it?
Droughts are happening all over the world too. The Middle East, Turkey, Iraq, and Syria are seeing their worst drought in 70 years. The Euphrates River right now is at 30% its normal capacity, and we have 20 million people that use that river for water. So we're really in dire straits. But what happens if we, and I don't know if you remember the slide last year, what happens if we stop the use of fossil fuels today and we go to pre-industrial levels of fossil fuels? If we do, the temperature's still going to rise. It's going to rise for another 1 to 2 degrees Celsius. And see if the use of CO2 stays in the air for 300 years to 1,000 years. And all the feedback mechanisms are in place now. The snow's melting and turning into dark blue water, absorbing the heat. Plants absorb less CO2 when it's warm. The soil releases CO2. The permafrost is melting, releasing methane. Forests are burning CO2. The forests are burning, releasing the CO2, and the oceans are warming, and they hold less CO2. So even if we stop today, the temperature is going to rise. So you probably all saw the report from the United Nations. You all heard about the report from the United Nations a few weeks ago. They said, code red for humanity. We got to stop this now. If they say that within 10 years, we could already be 1.5 degrees Celsius above where we are now. And if we reach pre-industrial levels, like I said, and you combine that with the 3 degrees, the additional, if you combine the 3 degrees, the 1.5 to 2 degrees we're going to get, but just going forward with carbon in the atmosphere, And with what we're doing on the planet now, which is 10 years from getting 1.5 degrees, we're going to end up with 3 degrees Celsius above current levels, and there's very little we can do about stopping at that level. It's unfortunately, we're full steam ahead for the climate crisis, and the consequences are going to be devastating. We have no choice to start now. So let me say some of the issues that we're going to see. Sea level rise. They're talking about, potentially 5 meters of sea level rise. We're going to affect hundreds of millions of people around the planet. Extreme weather events, which we're seeing. Mass extinction. We are at the 6th great extinction right now. There's a million species that are at risk of extinction. A third of the plants in the world are at risk of extinction. It's really dire. Fires, hurricanes, droughts, crop failure as a result of these items, ocean acidification, and if ocean acidification happens, which it's moving toward, that means calcium carbonate in the oceans dissolves, which means the krill dissolve, which means the whole food chain in the oceans dissolves. The coral dissolves. Ocean acidification is extremely scary. Mass human and animal migration. When you have droughts and fires and extreme weather, people move. They go to where it's cleaner, where there's water, it's cooler. Those mass migrations are going to result in war, political unrest and war. As I was saying a minute ago, Iraq and Syria are having an extreme drought right now. And a lot of the reason that there's war in the Middle East right now, what people believe, is because they've had extreme droughts over the last decade. So we really need to take care of this now, because we're going into a very dangerous world. And I don't think we can slow this move in a dangerous world, but it's moving very quickly. And it's on all of us right now to do whatever we can. So I started out with the gloom and doom, and now I want to talk about possible solutions. We are really the first generation to feel the impacts of climate change. And we're the last generation that can do anything about it. And I think everybody should take these words to heart. We really need to do everything that we can to stop the climate crisis, to slow the climate crisis. So we have 3 panelists here. Okay, the Zoom micromanagement. I think Robbie did a great job here already. Yeah, use your microphones. Raise your hands to be recognized electronically, or put your question in the chat. And then turn on your mic when when it's your turn to talk. So we have 3 panelists, and our 3 panelists are all going to provide information on what you can do to make a difference with the climate crisis and what you can do personally. And I'm going to look at this from a different perspective. Our first speaker is going to be Amanda Leonis, and she is a program manager with the Cool Cities program in San Jose, and she'll discuss ways that people can reduce their carbon footprint. Amanda's going to be followed by Robbie Brown, who's with Acterra's Healthy Plate and Healthy Planet program. And he's going to talk about what we can do with our diets to reduce the climate crisis. And then finally, Terry Trumbull is one of the past professors that I have on law at San Jose State. He's our League of Conservation Voters environmental lead, or endorsement lead. He's been doing that for 27 years now, Terry. And past Sierra Club endorsement lead. He's also sat on something like 37 different government committees, including the Planning Commission, and currently serves on LAFCO. So here, without further ado, let me hand the floor off to Amanda. Well, I'll stop sharing, Amanda, and if you can share, or Shannon, you can share the screen.
Yes, thank you. All right. Hello, everyone. It's so great to be here today. Thank you so much for having me. Shannon, if there's a way, oh, great. We got it into presentation mode. So here we go. So I'm Amanda Leonis. I work for the city of San Jose. I've been with the city for just under 6 years. I'm working as a acting environmental programs manager in the environmental services department. And I've been basically covering various energy efficiency and climate related programs since I've been working with the city. And part of that was to help develop our climate smart San Jose plan that I'm going to give a bit of a background on today. But I look forward to speaking about what residential facing programs that we have and how individuals can really help us take climate action through our Climate Smart Challenge and Cool Cities Challenge. All right, next slide. So
Yeah.
oh, yeah, thank you. Okay, so yeah, this is good.
And
All right. So what is Climate Smart San Jose? So back in February of 2018, the city of San Jose was actually one of the very first cities in the US to adopt a Paris Agreement aligned climate action plan, which is now called Climate Smart. And that plan really, or that, movement to adopt a Paris aligned agreement was in the absence of federal leadership at the time. So our mayor felt, very compelled to make that move to say, we're still in and we're going to develop a plan aligned with that. So the plan puts forth, pretty bold climate actions to decrease the community's energy, investment in renewable energy, reducing emissions from things like cars, and then of course promoting culturally vibrant neighborhoods and a better lifestyle with a climate emphasis. So with part of charting the plan aligned with the Paris Agreement, we knew that San Jose is growing to be about 400,000 more residents than what we currently have. So about the size of the city of Oakland coming to San Jose by the year 2040. So it was really important for us to develop a climate plan that built in economic growth as well and really set that framework so that we can reduce emissions while having, more residents coming this way. Next slide. So our Climate Smart San Jose plan really does serve as our blueprint for climate action, and Climate Smart builds upon our general plan Envision 2040. So that way we can ensure our planning, land development, population growth I mentioned is embedded into our goals. And so a few programs I want to highlight today are, so first off, our building reach code that passed a couple years back, encouraging building electrification and energy efficiency, requiring solar readiness on residential buildings and electrical vehicle readiness, as well as electric vehicle equipment installations. And with that also came a natural gas ban, which you might have heard about, and our building performance ordinance, which requires buildings over 20,000 square feet to disclose their energy and water use. So we're really trying to, walk the walk and set climate policies to further enhance and develop our climate smart plan. So with that, I want to touch today on two specific programs that are resident facing in ways that you all can help get involved in what San Jose is doing in terms of leadership around climate. So the first being our Climate Smart Challenge, and then I'll get into the Cool Cities Challenge. All right, so next slide. And how will we, get to our goals? And that's really amazing that we're all here today to kind of talk about that, because the climate conversation can feel really daunting and folks really don't know where to start. And we are experiencing this. It's not something that's, into the future. It's happening right now. So with that, that's really why we wanted to create a residential facing program to develop Climate Smart Challenge. And I'll kind of kick off what that's all about on the next slide. So our Climate Smart Challenge and platform is free for residents to use. It's translated in 3 languages, English, Spanish, and Vietnamese, and it is a tool the city offers for residents to engage in climate action as an individual, and then as like a household or a small team, or through a community group such as you all being here today. Our website for San Jose residents, it's up at the top. It's pretty small, but you all will get a copy of this deck. It's climatesmartsjchallenge.org. We have over 600 participants now and are actively recruiting more and really using this vehicle as a way to house information and really have folks feel like they can help us fight climate change. So next slide. So the first step in becoming or being a part of the Climate Smart Challenge is to create an energy profile. And that basically helps you start to really discover your own environmental impact. So looking at things in your lifestyle to help you, take a step back, evaluate through a series of sort of questions like a quiz, what your climate and environmental impact currently is. Next slide. So the questionnaire, based on some of the categories we just that I mentioned, so things talking about like the size of your home, which of your appliances are gas versus electric and how often you use them, your heating and cooling, and there's a cool feature that links to your PG&E account. The city does not have access to that account. That is completely private to you, but it does allow you to sync your account so that it can pull your energy data and see how you compare to others. It talks about what type of transportation you use and the type of food you eat and the waste you produce. And I'm excited that Robbie will then later discuss diet because that is, it does have a climate impact. Next slide. So the really great thing about the energy quiz and having that background is you can really see how you compare to others in the US, of course, in San Jose, and then looking at other countries as well. Next slide. So the platform has over 70 different climate actions to choose from, ranging from things like home energy to transportation to food and waste. And the actions also include things like community actions that you can work on together, such as a community project that you care about that's climate related. And the really amazing thing too is for each of the actions, there are resources that first tell you a rating of how easy or to moderate to difficult the action will be, if it requires any sort of monetary investment, and if it does, where you might find the financial resources to help with that, such as rebates or incentives. And what's really neat too is that there are actions here for homeowners or renters. So it's really has something for everyone. There's a youth component. There are actions here to more acquaint yourself with what climate change is, what resiliency means for our community. And just to further explain, there are sort of social media type of elements as well within the platform. Next slide. So here is an example of our community page for our department in San Jose Environmental Services. And this just shows the impact here at the bottom by how many points are the members within our ESD community group have contributed to, the amount of actions they've committed to, and then you can see the dollars saved collectively from all of the actions our folks have taken on the platform. And a really neat feature you'll see on the right-hand side is that there is that social media component I explained. So you're able to post which actions you recently took. If you say you updated an appliance in your home and you worked with a really great contractor you want to recommend, or you learned something about your energy use that you want to share with your friends and neighbors, it's a really good place to do that here. So that sort of makes it more gamified and a fun way to engage with your fellow neighbors. So that I'm of course kind of running through this. I know I don't want to spend too much time here, but our Climate Smart Challenge is definitely open and accepting new applicants. It's a really easy way to get involved. Again, it's a really great opportunity to learn about the many different actions you can take in your home, and you'd be surprised how many are at no cost and of barely, minimal effort. And you can see what kind of impact that has, how much dollars you can save, how much emissions you can save. So as an extra step, in the next slide, so San Jose, as you likely can understand, being a city, we are, of course, an under-resourced, understaffed, especially, being hit hard by COVID. And we understand, the importance of really working with the community to drive climate action. And so right now we are seeking a grant that is called the Cool City Challenge. And it's sort of like a next step beyond the challenge that I just went over. So we're working actively to sort of marry the two programs in the hopes that we get this grant. So what we need to do is the Cool Block program. It will basically help our neighbors connect and work together on some key areas such as disaster resiliency, carbon reductions, water stewardship, livability, and then of course empowering others to help make the changes. So with that, we're actually have partnered with Acterra on this as well, and we're working together to roll this out. We have about 80 or so Cool Block leaders signed up. We're trying to meet 200 by the 22nd. We're not sure if we can do it, but definitely want to share that opportunity with you, because if we are able to get this grant, it will bring in $1 million over the course of a few years to San Jose to again help further drive climate action and climate program implementation. So there's a QR code here if you want to learn more. I'm going to cover a little bit about it in the next slide. So what does it mean to be a Cool Block leader? So kind of what I recommend is if you want to, first reacquaint yourself with the Climate Smart Challenge, as a next step would be to then really recruit your neighbors to join a Cool Block team. You can lead different meetings to sort of take on that leadership role, and really identify opportunities within your neighborhood and how to involve others to get on board. And with that, you'll get an account on the Cool Block website. It has all the info you need on that. Of course, my contact info will be shared too. I'm here to help, training and coaching, and then opportunities to connect with other Cool Block leaders across San Jose. And then next slide. So residents, they are able to sign up as a Cool Block leader and lead a team of meetings, as I mentioned, and it's basically 9 different meetings around, of course, team building, and then looking at different focus areas, such as prepping for a climate emergency, such as energy blackouts or a natural disaster, looking at lifestyle, so ways to reduce your energy, your transportation, your carbon footprint, your water use, ensuring a sustainable water supply, and then resource sharing and taking those lessons learned back to your community and doing projects to help your community and expand on the program. So at the start, households are really working to change their habits within their home. And by the end, the goal is to really have the team work together on actions that will impact their own neighborhood blocks, the city, and of course, more holistically, the planet. So I know I covered a ton of information. On the next slide is my email address, and this slide deck will be sent out to all of you. So I do encourage you to ask me any questions you might have, and I will keep Shannon and team updated on if we do receive the Cool Cities Block grant, and we'll be further, fleshing out those details on how the two challenges were sort of marry together. So again, I know I covered a lot, but I really appreciate your time and look forward to the Q&A soon. Thank you.
Thank you, Amanda. I have one quick question. There was a question in the chat about whether non-San Jose residents can make use of the Climate Smart Challenge. Is that possible, or?
Great question. So I'm going to drop in the chat a website where you can see if the city you are a resident of has a challenge. Many of our cities within Santa Clara County and other California cities are working with the same vendor that we do. It's called Community Climate Solutions. So many cities have their own challenges using the same platform. So I'm going to drop in a link to the chat and you can see if your city has its own challenge, but also alternatively, if you were to join as a community group for, say for this group, Shannon, if you wanted to make a larger community group, those folks could then support San Jose sort of indirectly by joining the community group challenge.
Got it. Thank you.
Yes, and I'll drop that link in the chat shortly. Thank you.
Thank you, Amanda.
Thank you, Amanda. That was
Thank you.
really informative, and I hope everybody's going to log on to the website and start the challenge. Maybe we can get a few block leaders here so that we can get that number 200 million dollars towards this program. So our next presenter is going to be Robbie Brown. Robbie Brown is with Acterra, and Amanda just did a shout out to Acterra. So Robbie's going to help us with how to change our diets so we can have a little carbon footprint on the planet as possible.
Thank you for the introduction, Bob. It says I'm not able to share my screen.
Is it okay if I share for you, Robbie?
Sure, that's fine.
Presentation.
We can do that.
Okay.
All right, so thank you so much for inviting me again to be a part of this panel discussion. My name is Robbie Brown. I work for Acterra, and if you're not familiar with us, we're an environmental nonprofit based in the Bay Area, and we really take pride in empowering, educating, and engaging our local communities here and bringing people together to create local solutions for a healthy planet. Next slide, please. So Acterra has a lot of programming that we do, but today I'm really going to be focusing on Healthy Plate, Healthy Planet, which is our food sustainability program. And within that program itself, we like to focus on what we call plant-forward eating and plant-forward diets, and then the reduction of food waste. Next slide. So a lot of you are probably already aware that, for instance, driving a gas-powered car or heating and powering your home is a big contributor to the production of greenhouse gases. And that you can kind of see in this graph right here, those are represented in the first two bars. But many people are surprised to learn that the food footprint may be comparable to or even greater than the footprint from fueling your gas-powered car, and quite a bit greater than powering and heating your home. So food is shown in that third bar there where it says 19%. And this is the SF Bay Area average household greenhouse gas footprint. So your individual footprint might be a little bit different, but this is just an average. And you can see that for food, it's almost 10 metric tons of CO2 equivalents per household, which is significantly high. Then to the next slide, if you're more of a visual learner. So this shows 1 metric ton of carbon dioxide. You can kind of see it compared to a house. So for food, remember it was nearly 10 metric tons of CO2 equivalent greenhouse gases. So this is 1 metric ton. You'll need to imagine 10 times that per household per year, just from food alone, not even taking into account driving, flying, heating, and cooling your home. Next slide. So here at Acterra, one of our key priorities is focusing on food waste and the reduction of it. So food waste, the surprising factor about it is that 40% of our food in the US is wasted somewhere along the chain from farm to fork, so production to consumption. And the residential sector is the largest source of food waste overall, and it has one of the largest greenhouse gas footprints given the added energy required just to get that food from farm to home. So in this image here, you can see it shows the average amount of food wasted by a family of 4 in just 1 month. It's pretty depressing. And for many people, that food waste is not even composted. And this is where it gets even worse, because if it goes to the landfill, it slowly decomposes. And as it's decomposing, it's leaching methane into the atmosphere. And if you're not aware, methane happens to be one of the most powerful greenhouse gases. It's about 86 times more potent than carbon dioxide when it comes to climate change. Next slide, please. And in the US, more than 50% of the produce left behind on farms in 2019 was actually edible. I don't have the current statistics, but it's probably gone up due to all the labor shortages in just about every sector. And so that 50% of produce that was left behind on farms in 2019, that's enough fruit and vegetables theoretically to provide each food insecure American with 4 servings per day. And then from a global perspective, about 1.3 billion tons of food is wasted each year, 4 times the amount needed to feed the more than 800 million who are malnourished. Next slide. So given time constraints today, I'm not going to be able to go into too much detail about solutions, but please feel free to ask questions later or visit our website. But one easy solution that anyone can do is just reducing your waste by being a smarter shopper. So we recommend, for instance, before you go to the grocery store for the week, maybe meal prep, think about 3 to 5 meals you want to create those recipes, and then write down the respective ingredients that you need prior to going to the store. Then when you're at the grocery store, only buy what you need and what is represented on that list. And one of the most obvious solutions, but I do this all the time, it's a huge mistake, is going to the grocery store when you're hungry. When you're hungry, you tend to buy a lot more things that you just typically don't need, and that can increase the chances of food spoiling within your home. And then the next slide, this is something I'm always trying to improve on as well, is just becoming a smarter storer. So, wash and cut your veggies and store them in containers in your fridge if that's the appropriate thing for that ingredient. And you want to constantly check and remove aging produce before it spoils the rest. Make sure you're labeling your leftovers and consume them within 3 to 4 days when stored in the fridge, or 6 to 12 months when stored in the freezer. But every type of food has a different, particular way in which you need to store it. Just real quick, for instance, like onions, they're freshest when they're whole. They can last up to several months, but once they're cut, they only last for about 7 days. Some people don't know this, but when you store them, you want to try to keep them in cool, dark, dry, and well-ventilated places. Try not to store them in plastic. And when you remove onions with mold or dampness, remove them immediately, or they'll affect nearby onions. And you don't want to store them near potatoes, because then they'll cause those potatoes to sprout. If you have onions that are already used, store them in an airtight container in the refrigerator. You want to try to keep the moisture away from it, and try to keep that peel on. And if the onion sprouts green tops, it is safe to eat those green tops. But if for whatever reason you don't want to eat them, try to compost them. And then the next slide, think before you toss. So those potato and carrot peels that we most commonly peel off are actually really nutritious and delicious. We encourage you guys to keep those on if you can. Again, that can contribute to more food being wasted. Just make sure you scrub them well to remove any dirt. And then stale bread, for instance, you can use that to make croutons or garlic bread, maybe throw it in a quiche. If you have vegetable scraps, save those and store them to make a homemade stock if you want, or overripe fruits. There's plenty of solutions, right? You could bake them, put them in some sort of bread, a smoothie, and so forth. Next slide. And then portion control is really smart too. So 70% of surplus in food service actually comes from the consumers not eating everything they're served. So we recommend, a simple solution is just to bring a reusable container when you go out to eat, to make sure that you can store your leftovers, and make sure that's the first thing you eat before you make another meal down the road. Also order off the a la carte menu. I have a friend, she's in her 50s, and she still orders off the kids menu just because it's smaller portions. And you could consider maybe only ordering off the appetizer menu as well. So just start thinking about servings, whether you're eating out or within your own home. Next slide. So the other big aspect of our program is plant-forward eating. Now, a lot of people are like, what's plant-forward eating? I haven't heard that term before. So what we really mean by this is we're emphasizing and celebrating plant-based foods, but you're not limited to them. So don't think of it as a sacrifice in terms of what you can eat. It involves making plants the centerpiece of the meal, and you're using meat and dairy as more of an accent. So we want to really emphasize eating more fruits, vegetables, legumes, and whole grains. And most of you by now probably know it's healthier for you, but it actually happens to be healthier for the planet. And on the next slide, we'll see why. So when you're looking at this chart, you can see it's greenhouse gas emissions by food type. Everything on the left-hand side of that line tends to be animal-based, and everything on the right side tends to be plant-based. All the animal-based foods have a much higher footprint than plant-based foods. specifically beef, and lamb isn't reflected on this graph, but lamb is also very high. Cheese, milk, and other dairy products, chicken, eggs, pork, and seafood, they're all very carbon intensive. And there's many other problems associated with the meat and dairy industry too that can be problematic. And specifically when we're talking about factory farming, a lot of that tends to contribute to the pollution of land and water, excessive water consumption, land use, a lot of deforestation. There's a lot of real world, examples about that going on over in the Amazon. And of course, most importantly, the mistreatment of workers and animals themselves. Next slide. So beef, it's not what's for dinner. But why is it so high? Why is beef and lamb so high when it comes to greenhouse gas production? Well, these animals are ruminants, and ruminants are animals that have extra compartments in their stomach. They collect a lot of food there, and then the food starts to ferment while it's digesting. And so with the help of microbes and this fermentation process, methane gas is created. And just like humans, you get gassy, you got to release that gas, right? So cows typically burp it out, and they're releasing essentially like methane burps, if you will. And as I mentioned earlier, methane is one of the most potent greenhouse gases. It's 86 times more powerful than carbon dioxide. Next slide. So for the sake of time, I'm not going to be able to dive into these food certification labels too much. Happy to answer questions about them later on. But really quick, if you're trying to go all the way and find products that are completely plant-based, a quick and easy way to know if they are or not is to look for the certified vegan logo. This guarantees that the product you're ordering is 100% plant-based. If you are going to be purchasing some animal-based products, try to find certified humane products. So the standards and measures for that are reinforced by scientific research, veterinary advice, and practice experience from farmers. So they like to look at the animal's home and enclosure, the diet, the handling, transportation, the care specific to that animal. And it's really focused on improving the lives of those animals in food production. And then non-GMO, that's the last one I'll talk about right now. These standards were created by dozens of industry experts reflecting dynamic range and perspectives. GMO products, genetically modified organisms, generally correlates to the continued use of herbicides. GMO products are artificially created to withstand herbicides, but as a result, they're also responsible for the emergence of superweeds and superbugs, which then require more enhanced poisons and herbicides and so forth to kill off. So it's kind of like this endless cycle. Next slide. So now just on the consumer side of things, if you're grocery shopping, there's a wide variety of plant-based milks now on the market. It's booming, it's very popular. And I feel like every time I'm at the store, there's a new brand. A lot of these milks are fortified with nutrients and vitamins, such as calcium, vitamin D, B12, and omega-3, etc. So if you're worried about drinking plant-based milk and thinking maybe I won't get the nutrients that I get from dairy, animal-based milk, typically you are okay. They all vary though in texture and carbs and taste and consistency. So I recommend just trying a few so you find one that satiates your taste buds. Next slide. And then next, we like to really encourage moving meat to the side of your plate or off your plate. As I mentioned earlier, it doesn't have to be for every meal, but try to do it more often when you can. And many people, for instance, they like to get started with maybe like a meatless Monday, or try being plant-based before 6 p.m. daily. Eat one less serving of beef each Monday for 1 year. That alone could save up to 348 miles worth of emissions. And from a water perspective, just a fourth pound beef burger can produce use up to 10 bathtubs full of water. So it's very intensive. And I think these pictures are a nice visualizer here. So the little cars on the bottom represent greenhouse gas emission differences with these substitutions. So in this middle, for instance, this middle picture, we have what is eggplant bacon, and it's about half of a car, while normal bacon would be about 3.5. Or if you look at this one on the left-hand side, which would be chickpeas, it's about as well half or a quarter of a car, while lamb is significantly higher. Next slide. As I said, the market has been booming. There's a lot of popularity, and with that, there's a lot of new brands and innovations coming about. Plant-based meats and alternatives are much better than they used to be like 10 years ago, and there's just more variety in general. We don't necessarily encourage processed foods when you can get away from them, because we want to emphasize eating healthy, right? And processed foods can be high in sugars and salts. But every once in a while, it's good to treat yourself. And I, from time to time, like to try some of these meats just to add some variety to my dish. So, for example, on the left-hand side, we have Live Kindly Co. They make a vegan tuna. On the right-hand side, we have Daring Foods chicken. We have the Bratwurst Beyond sausage at the bottom, and at the very top, we have the Impossible Burger. They've gained a lot of traction. Even Burger King has an Impossible Burger now. Next slide. There's also plant-based cheeses. For the sake of time, I'm not going to go into too much detail about these, but they're made from a wide variety of things, such as like tofu, nuts, coconut oil, nutritional yeast, miso, and so forth. Next slide. There's also plant-based eggs. So if you're taking a look at the photo at the top, that's actually from Just Egg. That's the name of the brand. And the top two ingredients are mung beans and turmeric. But there's also all sorts of other varieties and options as well. You could use chia seeds as an egg binder. Some people use applesauce, silken tofu, aquafaba. It's fun to get creative. Next slide. So Acterra, we host a wide variety of events and programming. We have film screenings and panel discussions. We do online cooking demos. If this is something that's new to you and you want to learn some new recipes, encourage you to join in that sense. We have an online community if you need more support, newsletters, and community-based dietary challenges. Next slide. It's just a picture of our online community. So in this community, you will find recipes, restaurant recommendations, kitchen tips, and more. And then last but not least, there's two events I want to talk about. So on the next slide, we have Just Cooking. This is going to be a cooking demonstration and conversation with Mandela Grocery Cooperative. They're based in the East Bay. And this conversation is going to be about food and social justice. The two keynote speakers for this event saw a need in their community for access to nutritious and healthy foods, and they're going to talk about the solution for that. And then the next slide will be Holiday Refresh 2021. This is our biggest event for Healthy Plate, Healthy Planet of the year, and it's going to feature notable Bay Area chefs, and they're going to be creating sustainable and plant-based dishes that are representative of their culture around the holiday times. And on the final slide, you will see my email. Again, please feel free to reach out to me if you have any questions or visit our website. I'd be happy to help.
Great, thanks so much, Robbie. Go ahead, Bob.
All right, yeah, thank you very much, Robbie. That was an excellent presentation, and I'm sure we'll do a few questions for you a little later. Our next speaker is Terry Trumbull. So Terry's been an active community leader and political activist, environmental activist for 30 years in this community here. He helped me form the League of Conservation Voters 27 years ago. He's one of the founding members and has been our endorsement chair ever since. So without further ado, let me introduce you to Terry Trumbull.
Thank you, Bob. Bob and I thought that the titles you see now would be critical because we're encouraging people to use their people strength to get out and make a difference. You've heard very good presentations from Amanda and Robbie on what you can do in your personal life to make a difference. I just want to expand that to doing it at work. My daughter became the manager of her art gallery about a year and a half ago and instituted a recycling program in a place that's very heavy on throwing away paper. They often shred it, but it still can be recycled. And she changed all the thermostats to reduce energy use on both sides, whether it's hot or cold outside. So think about things that you can do in your personal life and your workplace. I do want to shoot down one concept that's quite accurate that I would expect most of you had, and that's the notion that California and San Jose are big leaders, which I think is true. About 5 years ago, The Economist, which I think is the world's best news magazine, did a lengthy write-up on California's climate change program, was a model for everybody in the whole planet. And just to reinforce Amanda, my client base is I work for more than 400 local governments in California. And my humble opinion is San Jose's got the best environmental program of any major city in the country. So that said, I'm going to read you briefly from a handbook for protecting the environment done by the League of Women Voters in 1980. And I think the three things I'm going to read to you still are true, certainly for climate change. So they said there remain significant gaps in our environmental protection framework in California. The enforcement of these laws is weak and unevenly administered, and the laws to protect the environment are being vociferously attacked by the special interests affected. It's hard to imagine anything more true for climate change than the oil and coal industry's attack on taking on climate change. So we live in a federal system of government, which is far more complicated than most countries. We have local, state, and federal levels of governments, as well as in our county, we have somewhere in the range of 40 to 50 special districts with different functions. The good news, 2 of those are local government energy agencies that are working very hard to reduce our impact on climate change emissions. But the point I wanted to make, Bob has got here, he was kind enough, I did an outline and he converted it into a PowerPoint presentation. And I just want to put in a plug. It's been my honor to know Bob for about 40 years, and he and I have been out slogging in the vineyards of local government for at least 40 years for each of us. One of the things that may surprise you are that my experience is local and state officials are very receptive to your ideas. So develop a relationship with them. Obviously, the best way to do that is become their buddies by working on their campaigns, or not just the legwork, but also contributing to them. But you also can make yourself visible by going to their community meetings and speaking at public hearings. It's easy to forget that California has a very open system where every government meeting has to be announced at least 2 days in advance, including their agenda. And there is a mandatory requirement in every government agency in California that you're entitled to speak on anything. So they set up a separate period for you to talk about items that are not on the agenda, so you can highlight a problem, or the items on the agenda you get to speak at. So it's easy to beat up on your local government officials. I've had several friends who were civil servants that have quit because of how abusive the public can be. As a county planning commissioner, I had people calling me at 2:30 in the morning with a newborn baby and trying out their collection of swear words on me. So public officials, whether they be elected or civil servants, are very appreciative of you thanking them for the work they do. Next thing I want to highlight is developing partners. If you're going to take on an issue in front of your city, the more people that you generate, the more interest groups, the more likely you are to be successful. So organize your friends and contacts, go to community meetings, get to know other people, work with nonprofit. My four are, I've been involved with a group called Breathe California. They're the lung health organization for the state of California. And lung health is all about cutting back on air pollution. There's a stupendous amount we do with some of the things that you saw in Amanda's and Robbie's list. But attend meetings, join, get on their board and drive their actions. I put here, Bob, I don't think listed it, which is you'd be amazed how easy it is to take over your local nonprofit. They're desperate for volunteers. And my humble opinion on my four boards is that the board of directors are amazingly lazy in terms of what they go out and do for their organizations. So Bob has already mentioned the League of Conservation Voters. When we formed that organization in 1992, the Sierra Club was so bad about its endorsement process that I invited them to all of our meetings and we got them to do endorsements as well as ours. And then an example of what we're talking about is our city forest. On a personal level, if you've got a spot where you want a tree, call them up. They'll be willing to plant one for you. You just need to commit that you're going to take care of it. As a professor at San Jose State the last 23 years, I got involved because there were all these vacant holes in the sidewalk where trees had been and were never taken care of by the people inside the buildings. So we went to the Board of Supervisors and got them to double the amount of money that they were giving. I think the total was about $1 million to plant trees throughout Santa Clara County. So there's an awful lot of things you can do to develop things. So I don't know whether Bob's got a slide on this, but just wanted you to know how many committees there are. There it is, Bob. So try to get appointed to a committee or commission. My city has 30. There are over 100 in the county. Get appointed to these commissions and see where you can make a difference. Bob, for example, has been on both the cities and the county's planning commission and also the county parks commission. And I'm sure there's some other ones that I could bring up. Or even better, get elected. The more involved you are with the community, particularly the partnership things or serving on a committee or a commission, the more likely you are to get elected. But it's amazing how high a level of people with no community involvement whatsoever have been able to get elected. So what's the last block say, Bob? I can't read it. No, not that one, the one before it on the far right on the screen.
Become a staffer. Yes.
Working for a council member or a supervisor is a great way to influence policy. As I mentioned, those elected officials are very responsive, even more so to a person that works for them that has an idea. And it's also a sensational way to get elected. It's amazing the number of staffers that head off to try to get elected to city council or even board of supervisors. All right, the next one, Bob. So stay informed, get on mailing lists. Your city council, board of supervisors, state agencies, state environmental agencies, get on their mailing lists. And if you get a chance to comment, go ahead and do it. So as I've mentioned, we have a very accessible system in California. All meetings are notified for state and local organizations. All meetings are public. You have a right to participate. You can speak on anything. And we have both a state and federal Freedom of Information Act that says all records that government keeps are available to you. So I did my TV show a couple of days ago, and Breathe California staffers had put together some great data just by digging up government documents. One of the things I found as a participant is that if you read those documents, a powerful tool to get some success. Stanford was proposing a freeway from 101 to 280 to serve their shopping center. In the environmental impact report, which is required on all projects, said that the proposed road that they wanted to build would not allow one more car to participate in the shopping center or to move, because they had 13 stop signs and stoplights that they were putting along the expressway. And that alone was enough to get the city council to vote down the project. And the EIR consultant came up and thanked me for actually being the only person that he thought had read the document. So you really can make a difference just by getting in and doing your homework. So I think the last one is to get out and do it. There's no shortage of worlds to conquer that need changes. You saw that in Bob's presentation. You saw a lot of things that you can do from Amanda and Robbie. It's just a matter of getting out and doing it and making a difference. Hopefully that'll be on your tombstone when you die. That's it. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Terry. Appreciate it. And, lots of words of wisdom out there. There's lots and lots of opportunities within the political world to get out there and really make a difference. And it's not that hard to do. So now we're on to our question and answers. It's your turn. So if you have any questions for our panelists, or you have some comments that you'd like to share with everybody on how we can make a difference, it was your time. So we'd like to ask, put a few ground rules in place so people just don't speak up. Make sure your microphone's on mute. And if you'd like to speak, either raise your hand electronically or ask a question electronically. And we will monitor the chat room. So who would like to start?
I think Philip has his hand raised. Philip, you want to ask your question?
Yeah, are there programs for renters as far as solar, or are there programs for meeting the solar challenge for the that Biden has in his agenda for the next 10 years?
I can speak to that a little bit. So I can follow up with some resources. There aren't any specific out of our department in San Jose. However, I am going to share some resources from our utility, San Jose Clean Energy, which procures power for San Jose. So I'll check on that with them. And then also through BayREN, the Bay Area Residential Energy Network, I believe is that acronym. They're administered out of the county. They have a lot of different like rebate and incentive type of programs. So I will pass on anything solar related to Shannon that can share with this group.
So let me add into that. Renters ought to take advantage of all the things that we were discussing in my presentation and go see your landlord. Get them to add it on. There are definitely programs that work for the landlord, and it's just a matter of talking to him. I suspect the city has things, I'm certain the state has programs that make it easier for your landlord. And, you know, just to give you an example of that, I headed the state agency that regulates garbage and recycling. And we set up special programs to try to get landlords to install recycling bins and get them picked up. And no reason you shouldn't be able to get the same thing, including car charging for your electric vehicle.
Great.
Thank you.
Terry. I think we had a question a while ago from the Cantor actually about meal kits, I believe. Cantor, I don't know if if you're still on and want to speak up or clarify, but I think it was during Robbie's presentation. Do you have a question on that?
Yeah, I was wondering about the services like Blue Apron that send you like a pre-portioned, set of ingredients for different meals for the week, which we've been using. And we've noticed that, a lot less food goes to waste in our fridge because it's just the two of us and it's hard to buy groceries for just a couple a lot of the times. But I'm wondering about the rest of the, the factors that go into the production of those. I know Blue Apron tries to do recyclable materials, that kind of stuff, but I'm just wondering how green kind of the, holistically and sustainable those types of programs are.
Yeah, that's a great question. Thank you for asking that. Although I haven't seen, specific statistics on those programs, and every program is a little bit different, right? From the waste perspective, you want to try to aim for a program that offers like compostable ware if they do offer that. Although recycling, like in theory, is great, the market is really poor right now. So there's not too many solutions for what is actually being recycled. And then, yeah, you want to take into account all the transportation and delivery fees. And then if there are like, the single film plastic layered over the foods and so forth. But in terms of food that like typically gets thrown away and is being used, I would take a look at Imperfect Foods. I believe that's the name. And they distribute produce that might look kind of ugly and typically isn't chosen at the grocery store, but it's still perfectly edible.
Great. Thank you, Robbie. Rachel, you have your hand up. Do you want to jump in?
Yeah, I was wondering if any of the panelists have any suggestions for sort of a centralized local resource with ideas about how to get engaged or speak up at meetings. Or I find myself like full-time working mom with 3 kids. I don't have time to kind of go research multiple different community websites. And I would love one spot that could say, hey, this month, these are a couple things where, we could help by making our voices heard without having to do too much research.
Anyone jump in?
Yeah, I can help on that too. I think one of Terry's slides did a good job of helping out there. And I think the best way is to, I don't know about a single location because that's hard if you want to go look at big food council agendas and things of that nature. But if you have specific issues like climate change you want to be involved in, get the local newsletters. They're very good about identifying what's the current hot topic. And there's a few good ones, local ones on the climate side of things. And that's the Climate Reality Project. There's both a Climate Reality Project Bay Area and a Climate Reality Project Silicon Valley. And the Bay Area newsletter is phenomenal. And then there's also SB 350, which is another environmental group. So what you want to do is, if you're interested in land use, go with the Committee for Green Foothills. I guess they're called Green Foothills now. Has probably one of the best land use emails there's right now. But whatever your subject is is important, find the newsletters because those people are monitoring the situation very clearly, and they'll be able to provide you with what's happening, what you should act on. And Rick, you can contact me later if you want some contacts.
Or their websites.
Their websites. Yeah. Because they'll send you emails and they'll send you alerts. So they'll send you email, text alerts. Hey, you need to send a text to your council member, an email to a council member on this.
And those are hyper local. So, because like I don't want to sign up for something and then get alerts for something in Oakland or.
Yeah, that's why I was recommending the local groups like Climate Reality Project for the Bay Area or for the Silicon Valley.
Yeah, the 350 Bay Area, like I put in the chat, they have a San Jose chapter actually as well, which does focus on, I mean, they still do state and national, initiatives, but they do focus a lot on what's happening in San Jose and Santa Clara County and surrounding counties. Okay, great. I think someone has their hand up. Jay Ruston? You're on mute.
Thank you.
Go.
Thank you. It's Jane. Hi, Shannon. I just want to thank everybody for having this Yom Kippur discussion. I've been wanting to see that for years with many different temples and groups. So yay for doing it. And I've been teaching a class called Climate Change, What You Can Do for a number of years at Stanford. And I just want to make the point that even though that report from IPCC clearly helps us know the urgency even more than we already did, please do whatever you can to not let people feel discouraged or feel like there's no reason to do anything. We certainly can make a big difference in turning things around, both on the individual and the more macro policy government level. So just do whatever you can to reverse that message. And, Shana Tova, everybody.
Thank you for that. Yeah, that's a great point. Steve Crandell raised that question right off the bat. Is it too late? And I think the answer has to be no. I mean, that's the message you get from a lot of the organizations that we work with too, including Dainu, that we're on the cusp of maybe being too late, but we still have time to reverse this. We just have to undertake a pretty massive effort to do it.
Last question from Vivian Cohen.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry, Shannon and everybody. The transportation and food footprints are enormous, and just even doing your own individual stuff sends out a message to the fossil fuel companies and others, and it's already pushing the needle with the divestment things that have been going on and so forth. So,
yep.
Thank you.
Vivian?
Unmute yourself, Vivian. Just press the button. There you go.
Am I unmuted?
Mhm.
Okay. I have this, I get so many things from organizations, and this one is protecting our food safety, earth justice. They do a lot for reforming the broken chemical system, dangerous chemicals, advancing sustainable agriculture. They say join the fight. So they're doing all kinds of things for food. So that's earth justice. I don't know if they have a website here, but it's a very good group. They do a lot of legislative things. So thanks. Thanks for
that. Was a rabbinic question.
Right.
So what you're supposed to end with, Vivian, is after you say your statement, then the question is, am I right? That's how we do it. Right? When we go to rabbinic conferences. That's
Am I hungry?
Right.
Rabbi, if I could, I just have like 2 slides here. I'll go through them very quickly. So just to wrap up, obviously things we can do, go check out the websites from 2 of our panelists today at Acterra and at Climate Smart San Jose. Like I said, we will make these decks available for everyone, so you don't have to necessarily take the links from these. One thing, well, a couple of things I want to mention here: educate yourself on climate change. There's a couple of great sites that have that I really like. Project Drawdown is excellent. I think they have a whole series of videos about climate change and how you can have the most effect and what the issues are. I highly recommend that, and the Climate Reality Project for that. Also, speak out about climate change. Make it normal to talk about. It's always a touchy topic. It's kind of, it can be political, but we got to talk about it, and we got to let people know what they can do. Also, join the Green Team. If you haven't reached out to us yet, reach out to me or Bob. We are on the Green Team. We run the Green Team, organize the Green Team. We have more events coming up. That's us at a creek cleanup a couple of months ago. Come out and help us out. And then finally, I want to mention the Dainu Circle of Jewish Silicon Valley, and Rabbi alluded to this earlier. He came out and helped us with this rally that we had at the end of last month. We're part of a national Jewish climate action organization, which is called Dainu. And they take on everything from national, state, and local legislation, educational events, climate action events. So we can put you in touch with them as well. And with that, I think we are just out of time. Rabbi, any closing words?
No, I was just so impressed with the three panelists. Well done, Bob and Shannon. Thank you for what you're doing. And there's just so much. I know it feels overwhelming, everyone, but we have to make a difference, each of us. Enough is enough. And I think one of the last points that we heard, which was a good one, is that each of us are dugmaot. Each of us are models of proper behavior. So the more each of us does, the more other people see that. And just remember, our politicians respond to us. So get involved and make sure that we are holding them responsible for having proper policies and making sure that we are focused on what's best for our environment, not what's best for our pocketbooks. And with that, everyone, have a wonderful, easy fast for the rest of the day. And you saw the schedule, I put it up a few times. And I would encourage you to really focus on healing and hear the beautiful Haftarah of Jonah at 3:15, and then our wonderful musical interlude, Yiskor Ne'ilah and Havdalah. Well done, everyone. This was terrific. First of many, many presentations and opportunities that we're going to have this year, because we have to focus on climate change. Now is the time. Shana Tova.
Shana Tova.
Thank you to all of you and our panelists. Much appreciated.
Thank you, everybody.